So welcome everybody. We'll probably have more people join as we get started. We want to say welcome from the OJJDP Tribal Youth Training and Technical Assistance Center. We're located here in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and we work within the Indian Country Child Trauma Center, which is a program that operates under the University of Oklahoma Health Science Center. So we're glad to be here today, and we are grateful to have this time to spend with you all and to share some resources that we've been working on and to support you in your efforts in working with tribal youth. So quick introductions from the presenters today. My name is Anna Clough. I am Muskogee Creek and Uchee. I work within the OJJDP Tribal Youth Training and Technical Assistance Center, and I am happy to be here today, and I'm going to let my fellow employee introduce herself.
Hello everyone, my name is Tasha Friday. I'm Wichita, Kiowa, and Caddo from Oklahoma. I am a technical assistance coordinator, and I'm excited to talk to you today about Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court.
Thank you. So we're going to have a quick tech overview. So I'm going to let Nicholas Birdshead, who is here on our staff, give you a quick run-through about how to utilize Adobe Connect today and talk a little bit about some of the features that we have. So we're going to get started here. We have a few questions that we wanted to ask you all. If you're here today, Tasha has a couple questions she wants to ask today.
Yeah, basically we just want to get an idea of who's represented within our group today. So the first question is, are you joining as part of an OJJDP-funded CTAS Purpose Area 8 funded project? If yes, feel free to share your wellness court name and location. You can do that in the chat box.
And I just wanted to say welcome Erin Thinelk, who is on our staff. She's joining today. Some of you may know her just through the work of the TA Center. Welcome to other people. Please feel free to type in your role or your Healing to Wellness Court and your location. We'd love to know if there's people here that are joining as part of the OJJDP family of wellness courts.
It looks like we have someone typing right now. It looks like Christopher Boyd. Okay, it looks like a newly hired tribal youth advocate with the Red Cliff Tribe. Currently no wellness court. But this is still going to be very useful if that's something that you all are looking forward and planning for, so we're very glad that you're here.
Yes, this is a good resource for communities that are newly developing, also looking toward future development. So thank you for sharing that. Feel free to continue sharing in the chat box if you would like.
We're going to go ahead and move to our second question, which it looks like Christopher kind of already answered part of that, but what is your role within the wellness court? Example, coordinator, probation, mentoring, behavioral health service provider, could even be a tribal cultural advisor or spiritual person. And if it's not a wellness court that you have currently, maybe just what is your role in your current employment?
Yeah, I would love to know, even if you're not working within a wellness court right now, but you're joining today, we'd love to know where you're joining from, or just, what is your work within the justice system. And I see several people are typing in, so we're going to give just a minute. If you're joining just by phone, that's also great. We like to read some of the responses out loud because we do have people that join just by phone. If you're also able to see the screen, that's good too, and you can see responses in the chat box. So Ken, I see you're a consultant.
American Indian, Alaskan Native, ATDC.
Christopher, you're a truancy officer in delinquency prevention. Thank you for sharing that.
Okay, it looks like Martha is a juvenile drug treatment court TTA provider and trainer.
Thank you, Martha. I think this will be really good for those who might be joining from a juvenile drug court perspective. because we're trying to share resources that are helpful, across the country, and we know that many of our providers, have served either in juvenile drug court treatment settings and are moving toward a wellness court setting. And so we want to bridge some of the gaps between those two, because we know that, there's a lot of information and resources out there, and trying to make those relate to wellness court development sometimes seem difficult, but, youth across the board are responsive and resilient to many of the initiatives that people have taken in all of these settings, and so we're happy to be working on sharing resources in those aspects.
Looks like Geraldine is a juvenile probation officer, and that tribe is just getting their juvenile wellness court off the ground, and she's looking for some ideas on how to utilize the wellness court as far as referrals and that type of thing. And I think what we are seeing from just the variety of capacities that each one of you work in, that each one will benefit, and these are the kinds of, the areas that you're all representing are the kinds of things that are going to, you're all going to work together to make the Healing to Wellness Court the best that it can be and to be successful and ultimately useful in rehabilitating tribal youth.
Yes. So we have one more question we wanted to ask, and I know that many of you have answered that a little bit, but in case you haven't, if you are operating a youth wellness court, can you let us know where you're at? So we have heard some of you just got started. So we have A, B, C, or D. You are either in the process of planning, you're in operation, you've been doing that for 1 to 3 years, you've been operating for 4 to 6 years, or you've been operating for 6+ years. Or if you're just here and you're just interested in learning more about youth wellness courts, we'd love to know that as well. So feel free to type your answer in the chat box, A through E. And, we think it's great. I'm glad that people are here if you're just interested in developing, we hope that this resource is going to be useful for you moving forward, and we're excited to be able to have this available to communities. So I see a lot of people are interested. I see more people typing, so we're going to give that just a minute. So really quickly, I just wanted to share just a little bit more about the Tribal Youth Training and Technical Assistance Center. We are a national training center. We work mainly with Purpose Area 8 and Purpose Area 9 CTAS funded grants through the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. However, we are able to provide training and technical assistance to any federally recognized tribe. And even if there's a community that's non-tribal but is working on developing a relationship with a local tribe or wants to support tribal youth in any way, our center is here. We're equipped to provide services. You can request through TTA 360 or directly through the center any kind of technical assistance related to supporting tribal youth in the judicial system and also with prevention programs. So that's just a little bit more about the TA Center before we get started. And I see more people are typing, just interested, and we'll keep looking at that chat box throughout, so feel free to use it. Great. Thank you for sharing that, Geraldine. She shares that we have employees hired and we don't have clients yet, but we have meetings set up. So looks like you guys are still moving forward in planning and implementation. So today we are going to talk about the Tribal Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court Handbook. Today is a preview. We have an October 2017 release date. We will have it available online on our website, and we're also able to send it directly to any of you here today that are on this webinar. We can send you a copy as soon as we release it. Today we're going to talk about the handbook itself. We wanted to give you, a little bit of background about where this handbook came from, where what direction we wanted to go with it, and how we want to support tribal communities, and just to tell you a little bit more about strategic planning for a juvenile healing to wellness court. So I wanted to share where it's going to be available. If you go to our website, It is tribalyouthprogram.org. We have some resources there available for tribal juvenile healing to wellness courts. The Wellness Court Handbook will be located on that page. You'll be able to download a full color PDF there. And we hope to release it sometime in mid-October, but definitely within the month. The handbook itself is in its very final revisions, and so we wanted to make sure that it's as user-friendly as possible and that communities are able to use it immediately once we release it. And so we've been working very diligently to get it ready, and today's kind of a preview and a sneak peek at what we've been working on and what we hope is going to be a really great resource for those interested in planning and for those who are currently implementing juvenile healing to wellness courts.
So basically what this is a cover of what the handbook will look like. It is going to be a little over 120-page introductory resource that's going to be supportive of tribal youth wellness court development. So really we're trying to make it very foundational so that it can help you step by step through the process and serve as a really great reference for you if there's a moment that comes where you're questioning, what do I do next?
Right. So when we started working on developing a handbook for juvenile healing to wellness courts, one of the things that we found were that there were many, many adult wellness court resources. And so adult wellness courts have been established for many years, decades even, and we moved into this position where we saw a gap in communities to serve tribal youth who have, issues related to substance use, alcoholism, drug use, opioid abuse. And so what we wanted to do was look at what are some tribal-specific approaches that we know are working for tribal youth, and what are some Western-based approaches that we know are working in juvenile drug courts. And so with that, we came up with a methodology to develop a handbook to support youth treatment, court processes, and practices. And really what it focused on was taking those approaches that we know are working in adult wellness courts and some of those principles that we know are operating within tribal wellness courts for adults, and considering what can we use to serve tribal youth, what is still relevant, even from an adult to youth population, and then integrating juvenile drug court treatment practices that we know help youth and are going to increase the success of tribal communities who are trying to build court-specific programs to support tribal youth. So the handbook itself focuses on a couple of resources that are really prominent. One of those is the tribal healing to wellness court components. Sometimes they're phrased as the tribal 10 key components. What we wanted to do was integrate those throughout the handbook. And so whenever you start to utilize the handbook, if you're familiar with the tribal 10 key components, you're going to see a symbol, and we try to tie whatever we're talking about, whatever component in the juvenile handbook that we have, it's going to tie back to that adult handbook. And so we wanted to ensure that we were utilizing known successful components and that we are going to try to translate into the youth wellness court. So throughout the handbook, you'll look for a key symbol. It's going to indicate a key component, 1 through 10, and it's integrated throughout the handbook. And there's a link here at the bottom of the page. If you're not familiar with the 10 key components, you can check those out. The Tribal Law and Policy Institute does have a full handbook on those components. It's available on their website. It goes through a lot lengthier explanation of each component, and then you can also see a summary of those components. And if you go to our webpage, tribalyouth.org, we also have a handout that walks through the key components. It talks about youth-focused approaches, and it also walks into a little bit of trauma-informed care. So if you see that symbol in the handbook, once you download it and start using it, that's what it's referring to. As
I mentioned before, the manual is It can be utilized by teams that are in the beginning stages of planning. That's that foundational information that we were discussing. And then also as a reference to be reviewed by teams that are already engaged in service provision. So those, it can be used all along the timeline of establishing a juvenile healing to wellness court.
Right. So one of the ideas that we had was to ensure that teams who may already be operating a wellness court would still find this handbook useful. And I feel that it's going to be a great resource for them because it does give time to maybe review what you already have in place and then to work back through, where can we make it better? Where can we look at where we need to improve as a court system? How can the team improve on how we interact? There's some examples in there for improving success through self-evaluation, and so we tried to cover both the beginning stages of development and also those later stages of going back and reassessing what kind of services are we providing, how can we improve, do we need to add to our advisory committee, do we need to add some more components to the services that we're offering. So we do feel that it's a comprehensive approach to serving youth regardless of where you're at, either at implementation or already providing services.
Right, and through that review, I think that it can also spur, brainstorming and, innovative practices that maybe you haven't thought of that are unique to your community. So we really want you to be able to think about it in a different context and grow from that.
Exactly. So the handbook itself is divided into 3 main areas. We start off with planning, the second area is implementation, and the third area is service provision. And so our center actively works with tribal programs that are implementing strategic planning processes, and so it felt natural for us to follow a strategic planning method to start a juvenile healing to wellness court. So you're going to move from the initial planning stages into when you're trying to implement the court, get it going, and then into service provision where you're providing services and starting to work on things like additional components, adding relationships, self-assessment of the program, continued case management, and the implementation of other components such as trauma-informed care, youth-focused services. So we wanted to have it be a natural flow from beginning to end, and so you'll see that hopefully throughout the handbook when you begin to utilize it. So we're going to take some time to kind of walk through the 3 areas a little bit more and do a breakdown on what the different chapters are about. So part 1 is in planning. In this section, we talk about identifying stakeholders. Those are the individuals in your community who are going to help get that court off the ground. These are people in tribal leadership. They're leaders within your community. They're the members of your team, and they're the individuals who really want to make a change in your juvenile justice system. Community engagement is something we wanted to definitely include. We know that it takes a community to support the infrastructure of the wellness court. The wellness court is a holistic approach to juvenile justice, and this includes inviting partnerships from both within your community and outside your community even to support referral processes, to continue getting those referrals into your court, and then to solidify those ongoing relationships that are going to keep services in action while you have youth participants in your court. Team players is a section devoted purely to identifying the roles within your team and then also giving you examples and information about what those individual team players might do. And again, we have tried to address that communities are different and they're unique, and that your team might look different from other wellness court teams, and that's okay because you're going to be developing what's going to work within your community. And the final section in part 1 is about action planning, and that's just going to give you a way to plan out how you're going to take the steps to get your wellness court in operation. So part 2 of the handbook is about initiating processes within the court. The wellness court is going to vary from community to community, but there were some baseline components that we saw that were successful within adult wellness courts that we definitely wanted to include within the youth court environment. And so initiating processes is going to go into general court development. That's including, how are you going to manage your cases? How are you going to screen and assess the youth that are coming into your court? Within that, we tried to identify some youth-focused screening and assessment tools. We talk more about how your team can become oriented with each other and how they can become trained and skilled in providing screening and assessment. There's a lot of links to resources and information that will help you identify processes that will work within your system. Phased system refers to learning the wellness court process that is supportive for youth. So if some of you here today are not familiar with the wellness court process, in general, most wellness courts incorporate a phased system approach. This includes a high-intensity case management process by the judicial team. That's ongoing contact, monitoring, drug testing, until you get to a lower intensity, which ultimately will result in a youth becoming autonomous and hopefully, living a sober and well life. And so the phase system section of the handbook talks about an example wellness court case for a youth participant. It talks about case management processes, and it talks about the roles and responsibilities that a team member may have as part of the wellness court structure. Consequences and rewards is a section devoted to a method that's used in adult wellness court. It's sometimes called sanctions and incentives. In our handbook, the language we use is consequences and rewards, and I've also heard therapeutic consequence. And really what that section is going to talk about is the development of an incentive system to support youth in changing their behavior. And there's a lot of information and resources from the juvenile drug court treatment setting that talks about the use of consequences and rewards. And because we've seen that be a successful method in juvenile drug treatment courts, we wanted to include that within the juvenile wellness court setting as well. And as always, all of the components that we've included in the handbook, those are things that you can choose to implement as a community. You don't have to implement those, but we wanted to share things that we know that have been working in the community and with youth in other communities.
Part 3 of the handbook discusses service provision. So this is when you are actually providing services to the youth in your community. The first topic covered there is case management, and so we want to cultivate effective methods for case management and team collaboration. This is very important, and it should involve, the stakeholders that you identified in Part 1 of the planning process, because you want to make sure that everyone has actually bought in and is an active participant in managing each youth, or that you set up a system where there's some accountability for those stakeholders. The second section is evaluation. And this section of the handbook, it kind of goes beyond what you would consider just statistical data, how many youth are going through the system and those kinds of things. It really focuses on reflection, trends, and lessons learned. So this is your area where you can evaluate how the Healing to Wellness Court is working and make adjustments if necessary, especially when you're just starting out. Everything is not going to stay exactly as the action plan laid it out to be. We all know that things can come up and situations change. So this evaluation period is very important to do and be mindful of, and just do it ever so often so you can take an account of where your court stands. Another thing that's very important that's covered under service provision is sustainability, because we want to make sure that when we're establishing these wonderful resources that are the Healing to Wellness Courts for our youth, that they're able to continue on into the future far beyond an initial grant or those kinds of things. So we want to make sure that not only we have other ways to fund this program, but also that we continue to have the stakeholders, the community buy-in, and all of that so that they can see the value in it and continue to support it. And then finally, under service provision, trauma-informed care is discussed. And so in that aspect, we just want to make sure that we're aware that trauma exists within our communities and that we're adequately addressing it as part of the reason that the youth have entered the system and in how we're administering the judicial system to better serve them.
Right, and so within all of those sections, woven throughout, again, are known components such as the tribal 10 key components, and additionally just some national resources from other TA centers that we know are serving youth and providing, resources and information for juvenile drug court treatment issues. And so one of the biggest things that, was in the back of our minds in the development of this was, the marriage of Western ideology and treatment methods, that can also support tribal youth. And so throughout the handbook, it's referenced that, what fits your community and works best for your youth is what's best for you. And so we want teams to focus on, here's what works best for our youth, here's what works best for our community. But we also wanted to share resources and information, in this comprehensive handbook that keeps it right at hand. And so if you want to think about a screening tool or some kind of method that you can use to work with youth in the wellness court, we hope that within this handbook, and it's our hope that there's going to be some information there that's going to help you out as you start to implement and develop your court. And so it is introductory. We feel that we've done a great job at trying to consolidate some of the many useful resources that are out there for youth and get them all into one place so that it can be right at your fingertips. You can walk through it with your team or even as an individual and work through developmental processes to establish a juvenile healing to wellness court.
And as Anna mentioned previously, if you find yourself in a situation where you need more in-depth explanation or assistance, feel free to reach out to our center through our website and, put in a request. We'd be happy to help you if you're stuck in a particular area.
Right. So one of the things that we've had a lot of requests for through our technical assistance processes are actual examples of some of the forms and some of the resources that you need to have in place to make your court operate. And so while not every single form or everything you might need to, operate a juvenile court case is there, we tried to provide several examples in the appendix. And so as part of the handbook, there's an appendix in that section. There are additional resources. We have some diagrams, some charts, and a lot of information about all of the components that we touch in the first 3 sections of the handbook. And so you can see an example here. This is an example of the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court team and the advisory committee. So just so you know, in the appendix, there's going to be a lot more specific information about many of the components that are in parts 1 through 3. If you flip to the appendix, you're going to see links to actual form examples to many of the things like MOU, MOA, letters of support, charters for advisory committees. There's links to a number of hard resources that you can utilize when you're looking to develop maybe something specific to your community. And I just want to preface that with, these aren't things that you can just hit copy and paste. We want teams to have examples on hand as you work to develop forms and resources that are specific to your community. But we realize it's helpful to see, what did another community develop as far as a juvenile orientation manual? Or, hey, I don't know how to develop policies and procedures. I'd really love to look at another wellness court's policies and procedures so that I can see, are there things that we haven't thought about, or are there things that would be helpful in our community? And so we wanted you to have access to those. So we linked up to publicly known resources, and then we also were given permission to share some resources from, fellow tribal communities. And so we're really thankful and grateful when we do get permission to do that. And in the appendix, you'll see a few of those examples from other communities that were willing to share their processes with developing courts.
The handbook is formatted to support team-oriented planning and discussion. On the previous slide, you see, it's a huge team that's working together to support tribal youth, and so we wanted the handbook to follow that same guideline, and it does provide stopping points for individual or team reflection. That's what we talked about in Area 3 with the service provision, because we do want you all to be able to take a breath, take a step back, and look at what you're doing, what you're deciding, and how you can make it better, or what's working, and things that you can share with other people who are in the planning stage that have worked well for you, and that is also a resource.
Exactly. So whenever you're utilizing the manual, the symbol to the left is a stopping point for reflection, and at those stopping points, there's going to be questions that you can field with either yourself, just to stop and pause and take some time to think about material that you're reading through, or as a team. And so a lot of times we work on developing a strategic plan. If we all have, that time to stop and think together and maybe think about some of the same questions, it can develop discussion amongst the group and maybe bring about, some things that maybe one person is thinking about and has on their mind, and then another team member is able to respond to that, and maybe that will enhance the services that you're going to be providing within your court. So we wanted this to be a real hands-on resource document for your team and for your community, and so you're able to share that both with your advisory committee and with your team and work through this together if you're newly implementing.
And one thing that the handbook provides for is for wellness court work groups to have the opportunity to document additional thoughts or notes on further team discussion. You'll see this in the next slide. And while it may not seem that significant, we think that it is, because we all know that we've gone to a million meetings and we have a million notepads or legal pads. We want this to be kind of your main resource. So, if you take the time to either write it as you're going or to just transfer what is very important, then you have this one document, this one guide that you can reference, and it will have all your information in it. So we thought it was important to provide that and to provide those opportunities to do it.
Right. So, to get if you're just starting to implement, to get a new judicial process off the ground can be time consuming. It can be, overwhelming. When we were trying to put all the things together to put in this handbook, there's so many things to think about as you develop a wellness court. And so we wanted there to be the opportunity to, save your thoughts on a piece of paper, document it, be able to share it with your teammates. Or if you're working individually, sometimes, it's just good to keep a log of things that cross your mind when you're working through a process like this. So we hope that you're able to take this again and work with your stakeholders and work with your team. And so we wanted to make this a real hands-on, almost workbook-style handbook. So a couple of things, some major points that we wanted to share just in preview of releasing this document and this resource. One is that our center has put a lot of time and effort and tried to consider the needs of communities in developing this resource. We saw that there is a need for specifically for tribal court development for youth, that there are existing resources and they are helpful, but when you're trying to get at resources that are specific to youth, we found that it was pretty difficult. And so I myself took a lot of effort. Tasha contributed, and we're so happy that we're able to offer this and that it's so close to being released. And I hope that it's helpful to anyone who picks it up. And maybe there's things in there that don't pertain to you or you don't think they're particularly helpful, but generally I feel like all of the components that are included within there are things that have worked in other communities, and I hope that they're helpful to you if you are going to utilize it to develop a wellness court. But to preface all of that is one thing that this handbook is going to do is hopefully to encourage you as a team to work through the components that we've included and, think about other components that you want to implement within your tribal court structure. What the handbook does not do is it is not a one-size-fits-all approach. We know and realize here at the TA Center that what works in one community will not work in another. What works in one community may work in another. It's totally dependent on your capacity within your community, the kind of partnerships that you have, maybe willingness of local county or state partners to interact and develop, MOA or MOU with you. And so, we came at that with, you are unique, you are going to utilize this to whatever fits you best as a community. And so that's one thing I want to just put out there and make sure that people know when they're using this that, we know you're unique, and whatever isn't in there and you feel like there's something you need help with, that the TA Center is here to support that, and that we are willing to, go whatever links to help you get your court off the ground.
And I think that's an opportunity for you to utilize, that blank space, if you will, within there to really customize it for your tribe. And you'll see on the next slide, it basically reiterates what Anna just said, that we want you to recognize the unique tribal values and customs that are in your community, in your area, within your nation, and we want it to fit those needs, because that's going to be one of the determining factors of success in your Healing to Wellness court, because we want it to be authentic to you. And so some of those, tribal-specific things we may not be able to help with, but we may be able to help you find the resources you need so that you can make it the best that it can be.
Right, and even just to call and have a consult and brainstorm, we're happy to do that also, or to talk through team roles, or, how can we make a wellness court fit in our community and all we have is a coordinator and one police officer. I mean, there are communities that can make this work. It doesn't mean, based on the size or capacity of the community that you cannot get this going. It's overwhelming, but we can make it happen, and as long as there are people that are dedicated within your community to getting this kind of court process in place. So I wanted to draw attention to one of the resources that are in the appendix, and I wanted Tasha to talk a little bit about this. One aspect of the wellness court that we know is different from, traditional juvenile drug court treatment is the aspect of, tribal traditional practices. And so I wanted to kind of walk through one of the diagrams that's in the appendix because I really love it, and Tasha helped develop this, and so I didn't know if you wanted to share a little bit about your thought process when you're putting this together.
So one of the things that makes the Healing to Wellness Court different is that we're looking at the complete person, and from a tribal perspective, that that's mind, body, spirit, and it could be within a Western context as well. But we want to make this something that addresses the native spirit, if you will, and so that's why on this diagram we discuss different things. A lot of tribes, based on our history within the United States, we have differing levels of cultural competency within our own communities. So every tribe may not have their language. I'm enrolled Wichita. We lost our last fluent speaker last year. And so we know that these things exist, and a lot of times by no fault of our own as Native people, we've experienced, all of these things. So we wanted to include some things that were pan-Indian, but then also things that were unique to certain communities. So tribal arts, we've seen really great examples of just teaching youth to make drums or do beadwork. Those kinds of things really instill in them a sense of pride and a sense of being and connect them back to who they are. Kinship terms, we see that a lot, and just addressing someone in kinship terms can make a youth feel like they're not alone, like they're part of a community, that they're loved and accepted. So we see that a lot. And then traditional life ways. So when we're discussing tribal value systems or ways that tribes traditionally may have used justice systems. So just reincorporating those things, talking to youth about ceremony and rituals. This one, depending on the tribe and how culturally competent or what their tribal culture is, can be very fluid. But, whether they want to incorporate smudging or sweat lodge ceremonies, stomp dance, those kinds of things, again, we're trying to reawaken this traditional spirit within our youth and give them a sense of who they are and being prideful in who they are, or proud of who they are, and using that to help them overcome these obstacles that they're facing.
Right. So, as we stated, we know that not every single thing on this list applies to every single community, but, we want tribal communities to feel empowered to make the wellness court what they want it to be and to integrate whatever traditional practices they feel are going to put their youth back on a path to wellness. And so, as an increase in protective factors to tribal youth, the involvement of culture within a judicial program, to see successful outcomes through the integration of traditional justice practices is something, that all of our communities want to see. And so we just wanted to give a sample of processes that have been integrated in both adult courts and some youth wellness courts in the country, and then also some from diversion programs. And so some of the examples are pulled from diversionary judicial programs that we know of. Some may be within youth wellness courts, and some may be within adult wellness courts. So those are going to be specific to your community, but there's examples there for you to utilize as needed. And this slide is more about the methodology that I talked about earlier. One of the resources that I wanted to include in the development of this handbook was the OJJDP Juvenile Drug Treatment Court Guidelines. Those are guidelines that were released last year, and they talk about juvenile drug court treatment, and those are successful outcomes from different components that are included within the court. And those are focused mainly on, obviously non-tribal courts. However, the practices and the success stories that were listed from some of the juvenile drug treatment courts I felt were very useful to wellness court development. And so you'll see those guidelines referenced throughout the handbook, and you can feel free to read through those guidelines and integrate any of those guidelines that you would like to. But I wanted to make sure and include those because I feel like it's important for you to know and understand the resources that are available to you, whether they're tribal or non-tribal, because we're here to help youth. We're here to try to be successful in what we're doing, and I think having any number of resources that can be youth guided is the best thing that you can do for your community, Western or non-Western, however you want to integrate them into your judicial system. So that's just a note on that. If you guys have thoughts on that, I would love to hear them. I know that many of the courts that we've worked with so far have been looking to juvenile drug treatment resources because, wellness court resources for youth are pretty limited. And so I would love to hear feedback about that. When you start utilizing the handbook, please feel free to shoot me an email or send me your feedback about the processes that we included within the handbook.
Ultimately, we want to have you all remain optimistic. We know starting from the ground up can be overwhelming, but tribal communities really do have unlimited opportunity to develop a unique strength-based court system. There's no one more equipped to address our youth than us. And so we want to set you up for success, and we want you to try to remain optimistic. We understand that, it can be overwhelming and, you can get tired. One thing that we talk a lot about in our center is self-care. So we do want you to take the time to care for yourself so that you can be rejuvenated to continue the great work that you're doing or that you're going to be doing. And so just remember that, the sky is the limit. What you want your court to be is, you're able to do that. It's all about what you make it. And so we're here to support you as much as we can to make that happen.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate that, we're here to support you. On the next slide, we want to share that you're able to request training and technical assistance specific to the handbook. Utilizing it, you're also able to request training and technical assistance for really any aspect of judicial court development or diversioning processes for tribal youth. We're here. You can make a request through our website, tribalyouth.org. You can also make a request by calling our center. There's some information on the last slide. And then also through TTA 360, which is the training and technical request website. So I wanted to open it up to questions and answers or just comments or anything that's on y'all's mind. We're here, and we want to hear what you guys have to say.
It looks like we already have someone typing, so we'll just wait for that question or comment.
And I think just some final commentary is if you joined later that this is a preview of this resource, that we are going to have this resource available on our website. You can go there. You'll be able to download a PDF version of the handbook. And if you have questions or have any kind of needs related to that, you'll be able to follow up for any training and technical assistance through our center. And I see, so when you say technical assistance, do you come out to our communities, or is this done via telephonic web? And we are able to provide on-site technical assistance. You can submit a request through our TA center. Once we get that request, we will review it with our team, and then we will just send you an approval or a notification if we're able to provide on-site TA. And that's just based on scheduling and availability of the team and when you're planning. So, and we can develop agendas, we can develop whatever resources you're needing as far as the on-site training. If you can let us know what you're needing, we have a form that you'll fill out, and our team can get back to you on how we do that. If we can't come on-site, we do have the availability to do telephone, web, screen sharing. We can do virtual meetings, so we have capability to do all of that. And I see the same question came from Eulalie about enhancing the traditional wellness court to be more efficient in services to the youth. And so, I hope that's what this handbook will help assist with that. And we tried to identify some processes that we know are helpful in other communities. And, we have communities that have had youth wellness courts in place currently, and then maybe some that have them in place and they're not operating right now. And through those contacts, we've been able to access some of their resources. And while I don't necessarily share those on our website, we do have some tribal examples that we can share person to person. And so if there's a document or something that you've been looking for and you haven't been able to find a good example to utilize, you can email me and I can definitely try to see if I can locate it to help you. And were there any other questions or comments? I'm happy that you all joined today. I wanted to make sure and address any questions we have about the resource. We will have this PowerPoint uploaded also with the handbook, and so if there were team members or others who weren't able to join today, they'll be able to review this webinar and this training. Thank you, Christopher. I'm so excited for you all. You know, just to see people here that are trying to advocate for youth and to make the system better is really encouraging for us at the TA Center. Just a little bit about our team. We have attorneys and behavioral health service providers that work on our team, and we work together to try and identify and support resource development for tribal communities. And we also provide one-on-one TA, and so if there's a question that you have and it's not for a lawyer, we're happy to refer that over to people on our team who are trained in psychology, who are trained in social work. We have a lot of different backgrounds here on the team, so you know, we're not just here to provide services just for the court. We're here to help, you know, in all aspects of tribal youth programmatic development. Thank you, Ken. That's very encouraging. We like nice words.
Yes, much appreciated.
Thank you. So please check back on our website. We so wanted to release it today, but we want to just finish up some loose ends, and it's ready to go. We'll have it on our website. We can send a notification to any of you here that joined today, but if not, on the slide on the page, it gives the website and exactly where it's going to be located for download. So just keep checking back during the month of October. I'm hoping by mid-October it'll be on there, but definitely by the end of October. So today was just kind of a sneak peek, a little preview for you, and just some sharing of the thoughts and the processes that we went through to get this resource to you all. And we're really glad that you're here and that you're working to make life better for tribal youth across the country.
Right, and if you have continuing interest in Healing to Wellness, we do offer a Healing to Wellness newsletter bi-monthly, yes. And so the next one will come out in October, and that one's going to focus on integrating culture into the Healing to Wellness model.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that, Tasha. We do have that, and if you go to our website, tribalyouthprogram.org, on the home page there are subscribe links to our regular newsletter, and I believe there's a subscribe link to the Healing to Wellness newsletter. If there is not, feel free to email both myself or Tasha. We can send you the subscribe link to the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court newsletter. And like Tasha said, we try to share resources on that newsletter. We share conferences and events that we know about, regional things that might not pop up on your radar, but maybe they're close enough to you that you can, you know, head on over to some local training. So please, yes, subscribe to that. We can get you the link if you email us or check out the website. Our staff is here to support you, so feel free to reach out to us anytime.